All right, so it's March 20th, 1990, and I'm working as a health and safety union rep for the International Lady Garment Workers Union in Manhattan on Broadway and 53rd, right near Central Park. And I'm working late, because I always work late, and I get a phone call from Ruben, the security guard, and I don't usually get calls from him. And he calls me and he says, there's a guy in the lobby and he wants to see you. He says he knows you. And I'm like, what's his name? He said, Richard Price. I'm thinking, Richard Price? I don't know a Richard Price. He said, well, he's got a letter from you, and it's laminated. I said, laminated? And so I was very confused, and he said, well, the letter says you sent him some books on the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. And then I remembered there was this letter that no one wanted to answer, but I was low seniority, so they gave it, my boss gave it to me to answer. And there was a guy named Richard Price from Three Rivers, Michigan. And he was somebody who, by the letter you could tell he was really different. He talked about his obsession with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire and how much it meant to him. Now, if you don't know the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, it's a big moment in labor history, especially for the Garment Workers Union. It was in 1911, March 25th, in Lower Manhattan. The Ash Building, the 3 top floors, was a sweatshop, and a rag caught on fire and went through the whole shop. And there was 146, mostly young immigrant women, teenagers, who were killed in that fire because the owner of the sweatshop kept the doors locked to keep the theft down, had unworking elevators, and the firefighters, their ladders only went to the floor right below them. So these women were burned and jumped, many of them jumped to their death. So it was a very traumatic thing, but it brought about a lot of change in health and safety, and it really spurred the International Lady Garment Workers Union. So he was really into this, and he told me how he had even done a big display about it at the Three Rivers Public Library, and then gotten the library cited for fire code violations. And he told, in the letter, he said he'd gotten a lot of the businesses in Three Rivers cited for fire code violations. So, he was different. And I was sort of struck by it, and I sent him some books on the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire and a nice letter thanking him for his interest, and I didn't think anything of it. And I didn't even think anything of it when the mayor of Three Rivers called me a little while later and said, Richard Price, just want to let you know, he's a good guy, the community really loves him, even though he keeps writing people up and getting them cited for fire code violations, and I vaguely remembered him saying he was going to come for the 79th anniversary of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire on March 25th. So I went down to the lobby, and there he was. He was a big guy in his mid-20s. He had his buttons, his flannel shirt all buttoned all the way to the top, and he had a coat on. It was like, crooked, and a backpack. And I looked at him, and you could tell he thought it was really important, but he looked down at the ground. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just looked really bashful and adorable. And I asked him, how did you get here? Where are you staying? And he said, well, I shoveled driveways all winter long in Three Rivers, Michigan, so I had enough money to get a round-trip train ticket here and an extra $100. I said, that's all you got is $100? He said, yeah. I said, where are you staying? He goes, well, last night I slept on a park bench in Central Park. And I was like, oh no. Because in 1990s New York, it was the crack epidemic was still raging, and there was, homeless people getting hurt all the time. And in fact, I remembered that someone had been burned on the park bench in Central Park not that long before. So I was like, oh no, I can't have this. So I start calling people and friends and shelters, and there's nothing available. And so I called my husband. Now, we had only been married a couple of years, and we had a tiny little place in the Bronx, 250 square feet maybe, and the smaller half of a second floor of a house. And I called my husband, and I told him the story, and I said, can I bring him home? And he said, of course, which is why I love him so much. But Ruben, the security guard, who was also off-duty cop, he said, Michelle, are you sure? You don't know this guy. You got a little baby at home. I had a 9-month-old baby at home, and he knew it. He had seen me walking pregnant all the time, and knew that baby was there. And he goes, are you really sure? And my friends who came out said, Michelle, you're crazy. This doesn't make sense. Don't do it. But I had made up my mind. I'm doing it. There's no other alternative. I'm not letting him sleep at a park bench in Central Park. So I brought him home, and you know what? We had an awesome time. We had a great time. We showed him how to go around New York. We took him out. We even took him, some friends of ours, a local garment, union in Manhattan. He learned how to merengue. He learned how to salsa. He ate Puerto Rican food. But the best part of the week is when I took him to the anniversary of the memorial of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. It was in front of the Ash building where the fire had occurred. He met all of these union dignitaries. He even met some of the descendants of people who had died in the fire, and he was beaming, and I was just basking in his happiness and felt so good. And he went home. We got him on the train back, and then a few days later, I get this call from the executive vice president's office on the top floor. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe she's noticing all these late hours I'm working, but no, that wasn't it. I go up there, and she lit into me. And you know what she said? She said I was irresponsible. She said I put my son at risk. What kind of mother was I? She said, what kind of a person would put the union at risk? You're making us liable. And I thought she was going to fire me, but I was crying so hard that I think she just felt sorry for me. So she said, if you ever do this again, you will be fired. And I bit my tongue because I was sole support. My husband was a stay-at-home dad, and I needed that job. So I know now that Richard Price had autism. You know, the way he was obsessed with a certain subject, the way he looked down and would look in the face, and the way he didn't seem to care if he got his neighbors written up for fire code violations. But I think about it, and I know this because that little baby that everyone cared so much about, he's the same age as Richard now. And he has autism. That's my son. The one Eddie Haker told you about. And so I ask you, when you see somebody on the street, maybe they need help, maybe they're just passing by, people might say they're crazy, might seem different, please be kind. Treat them like they could be your own son. Thank you.